Morris here, coming from the golf room in Dublin, Ohio, and what I want to do today is talk to you guys a little bit about swing playing, about managing your club face, which essentially manages your golf ball, and just it's going to cover a little bit of everything, quite frankly. So it's going to basically be around this theme of kind of steep, shallow, steeps. And what I mean by steep, shallow, steep, when I say the word steep, I'm only talking about the shaft. So this would be a steep shaft, this would be a shallow shaft. Now the definition of kind of being on plane, just to kind of overview this, is essentially the lower end of the club, whatever the lower end, if you can imagine that there was an imaginary line all the way down the target line, the lower end of the club would always be looking at the target line or parallel, and then you can see this is going to switch, go up to the top, looking at the target line, looking at the target line, looking at the target line, parallel, switch, so on and so forth. So what amateurs have a tendency to do in their backswings is they will go back shallow. What I mean by that is their hands have a tendency to go out, the shaft looks outside the golf ball, and because of momentum in transition, they will then steepen the shaft. And then because the club is coming too steep, they have no choice but to stand up and make space, dump it underneath, and then flip, which creates that early extension. And the early extension is really an effect, it's not a cause. So it's really something where your body is protecting yourself, because if I was like this and just rotate, being really steep, I'm just going to shatter my entire left side, and that's going to be terrible. So they have to kind of stand up at a posture to kind of defend against themselves. Now, tour players or better players have a tendency to do the opposite. So amateurs, just to recap, go back shallow, steep, shallow, whereas better players have a tendency to have their hands work a little bit in, and then the club goes up, and now it would be, we could define this as steep because the shaft is looking inside the ball line. Then they go up to the top, they shallow, so now it might look outside the ball line, and then they're going to swing and kind of rotate, which is going to allow them to really control the club face through the pivot of their body rather than their hands. So how can we kind of do this if we're practicing, if we're kind of struggling with that? Well, at the golf room, we use a lot of cones, and those who have kind of followed along really understand the concept when I say that proper swings create proper feelings. So I got to give you guys ways so that you can create a proper swing, which is going to give you a proper feeling, whatever that feeling is. So what I have is I have this cone here, and I'm going to set up, and I'm going to have this cone right on my toe line. So it's right on my toe line. Let me move this so it's a little bit right down the target line of the camera. So if I set this up, it's going to be right down my toe line. Okay, and that would be if I took it back and my hands were maybe a little in, the club out, that's a little exaggerated. And then if I took it back, this would be steep. And then if I came down under the cone, that would be shallow. And then if I rotated, that would be the steep later. So that's steep, shallow, steep. So you kind of make some swings, you get up, you're set up here, you can kind of go back, under, and through, and just kind of make some swings where you're really trying to get a sense of what that is. And the great part is, as you can see, I kind of hit that, which is one of my tendencies. I get a little bit too far inside. So for me, this is a great kind of drill that I do a lot because it helps give me feedback if I suck that club inside. So this is kind of that steep, shallow, steep. And then you can kind of take a golf ball. I'm going to move this back so the Trackman's a little bit more centered on with where I'm going to hit this, right? And you would want to practice, and you wouldn't want to do this really, really fast. You just want to do it so that your motor pattern is correct and you get the right feeling, right? So you got kind of your steep here, your shallow, and steep. And it's going to be just a little exaggerated of what's normal. So here you go. So you go steep, and just trying to hit like little shots that start a little right, draw back, so on and so forth. And then, you can take it away, and I'll kind of demonstrate just kind of doing it when it's at the pace. So it kind of go back steep, shallow, and then I'm going to rotate around, right? So steep, shallow, steep. Okay? So that's kind of like an overview of kind of how to feel the pitch of that shaft with your hands working in, the club working up, then the shaft laying down a little more, and then rotating, giving yourself the permission and the space to rotate. So try this drill at home. Let me know if you guys have any questions. You can submit them or email me at kmorris@thegolfroom.com. Hopefully we see you here in Dublin, Ohio at the Golf Room. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
So this is Justin Rose giving a great example of steep, shallow, steep. You can see as Rose takes the club back, he's going to take it back on the plane. The club's going to be looking a little bit inside the golf ball going back, so that would be the steep. He's then going to transition to the shallow. You can see now in his transition the club is looking outside the ball, so that's the steep. Shallow, this is the shallow part, and now he's going to rotate and control the club face through the pivot of his body, which is the steep. A great example of steep, shallow, steep.